Hello everyone, my name is Nadia Lee Owens and welcome to Bi Black and Bookish, where a bi black girl who reads too much rushes any straight person she comes across and demands they give her 20 bucks cuz it's Pride month. So happy Pride to all my fellow members of the Alphabet Mafia. Now this video was originally supposed to be a video about the Shades of Magic series, but then I got through the first few parts of the first book and got kind of bored. So then I went on a Manhwa slash manga binge. Here are several of my favorites. A cute GL manhwa called She's Also Cute Today, where this really studious yet antisocial girl befriends and eventually falls for this dumb delinquent girl who resembles a Samoyed, mainly in her personality, but also sort of in her looks. Every chapter just had me clutching my heart because they are too cute. BL called Whose Baby Is It? About this C-list actor who finds out his son is not biologically his son, but rather the son of this rich future CEO guy, and they work together to find a way to co-parent while falling in love. They are also really adorable, and I love reading stories about diverse and non-traditional families. A het shoujo romance called I Will Change the Genre, where the protagonist finds herself in the world of her favorite revenge novel, where the character she is inhabiting dies because originally that character was a terrible and abusive aunt slash caregiver to the main character of the novel. So she tries to be kinder in order to change the genre. This one is also pretty cute with the non-traditional family trope that I am so fond of. A shoujo ai called Hello Melancholic, where an awkward teenage girl is invited to play in her school's musical club by an upperclassman girl. I've only read the first 3 chapters, but I find the main character relatable due to her awkwardness because I was also an awkward teenage girl who grew up to become an awkward adult woman. A slice of life shonen manga called Blue Flag, where this love square where the main character is helping a short light-haired girl to get attentions of his childhood best friend who actually likes him, and the short girl's childhood friend likes her. Slice of life is one of my favorite genres in manga slash anime, and I just want these kids to be happy. A supernatural shonen manga called Chainsaw Man, about a young man who becomes a human devil hybrid and joins a group of devil hunters run by the government. This dude's main motivation is simply to get a girlfriend and touch her boobs, and honestly, that makes him the most relatable shonen protagonist ever. I also want a girlfriend so I can just constantly touch her tickle bitties, preferably Lady D from Resident Evil 8. So that is what I've been reading this month rather than the books I said I would. But that's not also what I've been doing. I've also spent way too much money on shoes, clothes, makeup, new wigs, video games, Uber Eats, and also a decent stack of books. The first 2 books I got are the first 2 parts of the Legend of Korra graphic novel trilogy, Ruins of the Empire. This is the second trilogy that came out after the end of the Legend of Korra TV show back in 2014. The first one, Turf Wars, is set right after the final moments of the show where Korra and Asami decide to take an impromptu vacation to the spirit world, and they canonically yet not explicitly became a couple. But don't worry, my fellow Korrasami fans out there, Turf Wars gave us so many loving scenes between Korra and Asami where they hug and kiss and call each other girlfriends and cute pet names. I'm hoping Ruins of the Empire will also have more moments like that. Another reason why I'm excited to get into this series is because they brought back the final villain of the show, Kuvera, who is my personal fave and also bi, at least in my headcanon. She is being put on trial for trying to run the whole Earth Kingdom into an imperialist state. So, just your typical avatar villain with radical political beliefs. The next two books I got fall into the genre of nonfiction books about books. Reading Like a Writer, a guide for people who love books and for those who want to write them, by Francine Prose. Yeah, Prose. And How to Read Literature Like a Professor, a quippy and sonorous guide to verse by Thomas C. Foster. I'm always looking to improve my literary criticism abilities and applying it to my own writing. I actually read Foster's first book of the series called How to Read Literature Like a Professor for my English Lit class back in senior year of high school. And I'm currently reading How to Read Novels Like a Professor. I've never read Prose, never even heard of her before, but Reading Like a Writer has decent reviews online, so I'm willing to give it a try. I randomly came across the next book, Spellmaker by Charlie N. Holmberg, at my local indie bookstore, where I read the back of the book and I was like, ooh, magical unsolved murders, ooh, magical secrets, ooh, magical assassins. So obviously I was intrigued, and you never know, maybe there's like a magic element in it. This book is actually the second in its duology, which I didn't realize at the time because I'm an idiot. So I ended up ordering the first book online. I also got Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. Sorry, I can't say words like a normal human being. I remember this book was being talked about by everyone when it first came out, and I'm so excited to finally read it. I love discovering fantasy books that aren't based on Western folklore and culture like Akata Witch. I'm hoping that this book lives up to the hype because I have been disappointed before. The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers is another book that I just randomly came across. And the thing that immediately drew me to this book is the cover, which reminds me a lot of the video game The Outer Worlds, which was developed by Obsidian, the same studio that developed the best Fallout game, Fallout New Vegas. I also got excited when I read the back and saw that the main character is a woman, which is a rare find in sci-fi, a genre that has a rep for being pretty dominated by men. Another interesting note is that on Goodreads, it got the LGBT tag, and one of my favorite genres in any sort of media is gaze in space. I got this collection of poetry called Breakbeat Poets, New American Poetry in the Age of Hip Hop, after noticing that one of my friends had it. So I did that jealous little kid thing where I went, I want that too. And so I ended up ordering it on Amazon. My collection of poetry isn't the biggest, but it has been growing in the past few years as I've been getting into writing poetry. And I also just adore the cover. It's super cute. The next book I bought is the memoir of Karamo Brown from Netflix's Queer Eye, titled Karamo, My Story of Embracing Purpose, Healing, and Hope. Since Queer Eye was such a hit, and it's basically an obligation at this point for anyone with some sort of name recognition to write a book, everyone in the Fab Five has a book out, at least as far as I know. But Karamo's story is the one that I resonate most with because we both have similar backgrounds as growing up Black and gay in the South, and feeling sort of singled out as the only Black person in a predominantly white space. A quick trigger warning for these next few. If you feel uncomfortable with the subject matter, please feel free to skip this next part. This next few books are volumes 3 through 5 of Angel Sanctuary because the bookstore didn't have the first 2 volumes. I remember really liking this series back in middle school and reading it on onemanga.com when that was a thing. I loved the gothic fantasy aesthetic and its many references to Grimm's fairy tales and Greek mythology, Norse legends, and of course biblical stories. And did I also mention that in later chapters there are giant spaceship like things flying around in heaven? It was pretty dope. So I even convinced my English teacher to let me read this manga or reread it for my book report. The main issue with Angel Sanctuary, though, was the fact that the protagonist, a teenage boy named Setsuna, was in fact in love with his twin sister Sarah. And that is like a constant character motivation for him. So it isn't an easy thing to forget. So I wouldn't recommend Angel Sanctuary to just anyone. But it was kind of cool how Lucifer's soul was trapped in this badass sword. So the last book that I got, I actually pre-ordered on Amazon, and it is called My Alcoholic Escape from Reality by Nagata Kabi. You may recognize Nagata or her art style from her first manga, My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness, which was hugely popular when it first came out in between 2016 and 2017. She also came out with two other mangas called My Solo Exchange Diary, volumes 1 and 2, before this one. All of them are autobiographical and focuses on her experiences coming to terms with her sexuality, mental and physical health, and trying to become an independent adult, and also sort of struggling to find a place in her own family. As you can tell based on these tabs sticking out, I've already read this, so let's get a little bit more in depth. Another trigger warning for this next part. Once again, if you feel uncomfortable with the subject matter, please feel free to skip to the outro. Right at the start, we are introduced to the main conflict of the manga, which is the fact that Nagata has been diagnosed with acute pancreatitis induced by alcohol consumption and had to spend most of October 2021 hospitalized. Her excessive drinking was something that she has mentioned in her previous manga, and she also ended up going to the hospital for. The drinking got a lot worse, though, as Nagata found herself trying to deal with her writer/artist block. So rather than doing nothing and being alone with her own thoughts, she started relying more and more on alcohol. And I can empathize with that, because whenever your entire identity gravitates around your ability as a writer or an artist or anything really, you suddenly find yourself unable to do the thing that makes you you. There's this feeling of emptiness and worthlessness that is difficult to cope with if you don't know any healthy coping mechanism. And I've noticed that Nagata does sort of do that a lot, because her recovery isn't a straightforward one like anyone else's. It's a pretty bumpy road with ups and many, many downs. She starts to lonely stare at food in stores, menus that she can't no longer eat, which, trust me, starts this really unhealthy relationship with food. She starts to excessively drink again. Towards the beginning, Nagata wonders to herself if this much pain will push something valuable out of her. It is no secret that in the creative world, there seems to be some sort of fetishization of one's trauma in order to create good art. But really what you're doing is you're kind of wallowing in that pain, and it's hard to get out of. Hannah Gadsby mentioned something similar in her stand-up, Nanette, when talking about Vincent van Gogh. And I'm not saying that Nagata or even her fans is fetishizing her pain at all. I'm just saying that if she was an author who wasn't so self-reflective, it would be easy to sort of slide into that habit. Throughout the manga, Nagata also reflects on her relationship with her parents, and at the same time trying to apologize to them and gain their approval. I believe it was in her last book where both Nagata's parents discovered her manga, and like all autobio writings, there was discussion about how she felt about her family, the good and the bad feelings. Of course, Nagata's parents, especially her mom, felt kind of hurt or betrayed by how the manga presented them. Even in the beginning, after getting the diagnosis, her dad says, planning to make this a manga too, which I read as being pretty passive aggressive. And it's because of their hurt feelings that Nagata tends to write solely fiction manga. She says, I can't erase the crime of upsetting my parents. At the very least, I have to draw a work of fiction they can be proud of. Now, Nagata is in her early 30s, but she still feels the need to please her parents, for them to tell her, oh, you're doing such a good job. And I honestly think that's something that all of us have a compulsion for deep down. And we all want to get praise from our parental figures in our lives, no matter how old we get. But obviously, Nagata continues to write autobio mangas, and honestly, good for her. These are her feelings and her experiences. It always is going to go back to her relationships with her parents, and because that shapes who she is and her life, and there's really nothing they can do about it because it's her story, not theirs. In the end, Nagata does make vast improvements. All of her levels are in normal range. Her nausea and pain is more or less gone, and she makes the efforts to improve her health. She comes to the realization that she wants to continue writing manga about her own experiences with loneliness and desire to love and being loved. But she does kind of spiral right before the end, and as she is spiraling and reaching that dangerous zone of suicidal thoughts, she remembers a comment a fellow manga artist said. And I do believe that to be the entire point of this manga in particular. So it's what I want to leave this review on. I know only too well that not dying is a difficult thing. But when I think about how tomorrow will come and drop an unexpected bit of hope into your lap, I want you not to die. Well, that's all she wrote. Let me know if you've heard of any of these mangas or books and what's your opinion on them in the comments, or follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Lee Owens. Hope to see you next month when I actually do talk about the Shades of Magic series. Bye.